Happy Songkran, Thai New Year, and happy investing in stock markets. Equities to the upside, the NASDAQ moving higher, oil markets rolling to higher levels. With that, welcome back to our FX Strategies morning call here. Today we are trading on a Monday, 14th of April. Holy moly, what a strong recovery. Is that going to mean that the recession is not going to come? That's the big question mark, I might say. We still should be prepared for shaky times in markets. Maybe towards July, August, the market might tank again. Traditionally, we had seen that after such a strong and fast recovery, the markets had been remaining in a shaky environment, and hence obviously kind of offering room for further downside motivation of some sort, at least, and at some point. Markets offer quite a ton of information this week, so there's going to be a lot of market volatility being expected. And now I closed my calendar because we have basically a ton of further market information coming up with important and big news events, and those basic news events actually kind of come from starting from and with the Bank of Canada. Bank of Canada is offering some potential market volatility. The expectation is basically that no rate adjustment, we can see the data here, no rate adjustment is gonna happen here in during this news event here. That's only due on Wednesday, so a bit of time remaining at 2.75%. After the recent rate cuts we've seen, basically the March data showing us here, or the calendar from March showing us that a 25 basis point rate cut was gonna causing some input here. Let's move further towards what we get earlier basically this week, and that's going to be the consumer prices from the Canadian side. Stepping back a little step further, we had seen the consumer sentiment in the US tanked basically from above 70 down to 65 something. Now we're at 50 odd, and this could be of particular help that the US dollar against the Canadian dollar, a currency pair, was basically off this support area, talking towards lower price levels, and now the market might indeed cause a further slide in markets. Should we be on the long side of things? I might say not yet, because the US dollar is likely going to offer quite a bit of weakness to move on further. We don't expect that the US dollar is going to move into positive territory, at least not anytime soon, but instead might offer downside momentum even further. The technical candlestick patterns gave us exactly what we chatted about quite a bit of time beforehand. We didn't time it right with the short position, but early on I already said let's aim in this market to a downside and for downside motivation. Didn't work out so far, but what we see is now this important area. Technical resistance here was basically and could now cause a supportive pattern. So a slight push to the upside here initially is then what could cause the markets to weaken somehow further if we get a bit of an upside momentum here. At the moment, it really doesn't look like that, but we shall see. Markets can surprise us quite fast, and this might turn the market around quite quickly here again. So that's for the data. Canadian data, we've seen and we can see that the market information is just not giving us much insight. But if the 2.9% price rising motivation is just basically calling for lower figures, maybe we get 2.8, 2.7%, we can see that this highly volatile currency pair, the US dollar strength, might push this market to the upside, and hence obviously kind of initially cause the motivation here with retracements to offer us fresh inside momentum and entry opportunities to begin with. That's the figure on Tuesday, and then Wednesday again, we have Wednesday morning something similar from the British side. We come to this, and then the Bank of Canada's interest rate decision with 2.75% is going to be the data which we shall take into consideration and to see what goes in this market and what might help us here in the next couple of trading days. Looking at the British pound, there was a strong candlestick pattern, and that strong candlestick pattern basically caused the markets to be of sharp and strong resistance area. Though this area might now start to basically kind of decrease motivation in terms of the US dollar even further, because the market motivation, and that's the current situation I talk about here, we had this strong bearish candlestick that was basically 2 weeks ago, and then looking back here last week, the market just the previous week was about to kind of break the high points, and now this week either we remain below this technical pattern. And for the guys of you a part of our coaching program, we obviously check out on how this goes within our WhatsApp chat on a daily basis. For the others, stay tuned and wait for some updates. So please, in the meantime, don't forget to subscribe to our channel to not miss our 3-minute market updates in the next couple of trading days. We talked about the pound basically. Go back and watch the recent video from last week. Nevertheless, what's the story here now with this market? This one we can use in confirmation and looking for higher price patterns. Currently though, this market environment here might call for some weakness, right? If the market breaks below this area, we could see, and we can see that this technical pattern might obviously be of particular interest here. If the market breaks this zone again, we could see that the market also is about to weaken further. If the market breaks the upside here, we might see the market breaking to higher levels, causing another uplift here in this market. Whereas, and that's the interesting part here, whereas this market environment obviously kind of fuels by the weakness in the dollar, the greenbacks losing steam might rather cause the market to swift back to the upside here. Holy moly, who would have thought that this US dollar weakness is gonna continue at some point? I was not thinking about it, to be honest, and I was just rather focusing basically on further weaker prices and basically just believing that the market momentum in terms of potential strength of the dollar might resurface. Anyways, that's not the case, and hence obviously the upside potential here in regards to a dollar weakness, the pound strengthening, the Aussie strengthening, and our next trade, potentially the euro, even remaining in stronger market environment here of some sort. What's next is the biggest news event for the week, and that's the importance with the European Central Bank. That's going to be expected another 25 basis points of rate cut. And this could briefly harm the euro. The euro might actually weaken somehow. And that's what we can see here in this market environment. There's such a strong trend right now, guys, and I really like it. Resistance area, just focus on this trend lines. You don't need any Fibonacci's or any whatnot candlestick patterns or any other patterns here. But the market had broken this zone here. Now I want to zoom out, so I have to delete those arrows here again, but of that area basically where the market environment has kind of basically broken above the high point here, we might say what could happen in the near future is that the market basically indeed weakens again all the way towards this area, this falling trend line, to then see the rocket being launched, right? After the break of such zone, what we quite often get is that the market retraces from the top towards that zone to then see the upside here, and that's exactly how the trend looks like. So basically, if zooming in to that environment here again once more, we market might see all the way towards this area here, towards the 111.40, 111.60 area, a bit of a retracement here, and then in this market exactly, boom, uplift, upside momentum might continue, depending a little bit on how the strength in the euro is gonna continue potentially. In between, we have some smaller data being expected. Jerome Powell is going to talk on Wednesday night. That's before the European Central Bank. Apart from this, we have not too much important information. We have the Bank of Canada and the European Central Bank. But let's move further towards charting patterns and check out what the Australian dollar is going to do. Because the Aussie has basically shown us that that there was a strong risk appetite fairly recently. Stock markets worth the debate, and the Australian US dollar currency pair is clearly showing some upside motivation, and that's basically based on this strong support zone holding the market nicely up from falling. Now we could maybe argue there is a bit of a trend line here. Whoa, this is just a weak wacky trend line, but upside motivation in this market might actually work out, and what we might see is that the market again kind of causes upside motivation unless we see basically something else, and that is another retracement of this resistance area, because looking at it from the, and let's mark it nicely here, let's look at it from this perspective. We would have this trending this trend line here, the resistance zone here, if looking at it from that perspective, or we could also take this one into consideration. Then we would say, okay, the market trend would actually be short-lived and we could celebrate some weakness. All in all, what we quite often have in this candlestick pattern, that's the monthly chart, obviously here. Of the weekly, the market gave us a total turnaround. One candlestick, and let's mark it with a smaller one. One small candlestick to the downside, and the bigger one, engulfing candlestick here to the upside. You can see what I mean here. We have basically kind of cleared the upside already here, and we've basically just cleared the downside, right? So we've we've opened at lower prices, immediately shot higher, and this engulfing green candlestick might call for another push to higher price levels, as the market sentiment seems to be rather in favor of the Aussie and, negatively speaking, against the greenback, the US dollar at least, of some sort for now. The S&P 500 also kind of in a nice move to the upside here of this technical support pattern. Upside motivation now gonna likely, at least potentially, however, continue on a monthly basis. Whoa, this is such a strong candlestick pattern we see here, and I like it because we've tested this 50 moving average, the 50 Fibonacci level. Yeah, so comparing previous levels and zones, we can see recent sliding prices all the way in 2022 came to hold down there, and then we had 23, 24, huge upside momentum here, and now the market was just testing those recent zones, previously tested, not perfectly fine, but resistance here on the left, support on the right, and that's a bit my tricky situation, or the tricky situation I see. Medium term, if the market would push higher again, obviously then this 50 moving average, which is what it is here, would get a bit of a bend, right? So given the fact that the markets might now start to lift higher, then the last part here of this 50 moving average might pin to the upside and might hence obviously start to basically end this market here, which would mean the market would still have kind of tested that 50 moving average. If not, then we see potentially, and that's on the cards as well, obviously, just some further downside motivation here. This might mean that the market upside might kind of really be resumed. We might see the downside might be resumed. Yeah, that the market remains in a bit of a sideways pattern and weakening, first of all, before a strong move to higher levels it can be seen. Guys, that's the majority of open positions. We have a long in the euro dollar. Subscribers know the entry price is there. We got adjustments in the pound potentially. Let's see how that one goes. The Aussie looking positive. The dollar, the American, against the Japanese yen looking kind of quite interesting, but rather this comes from the weakness of the US dollar. Yeah, so the Japanese yen is kind of quite weak as well. So be careful with any trades here in this market environment. But yeah, last but not least, obviously also something worth a consideration we have to chat up about right now: crypto markets. And let's start with the Bitcoin, because the crypto market has kind of nicely moved back to higher levels again. And worth checking out the Bitcoin chart, because this one had moved quite high in recent trading days. And here we go. The Bitcoin market looking positive right now. There's nothing much which I would say is not holding the market up, because we've just stopped falling right around this 50 moving average here, and that's exactly the zone the market had stopped kind of quite a few times. We've seen this again, and we can see that maybe now the market is ripe, and that depends on how the overall risk management goes. The market might be ripe to rock the show and rock upside motivation here. In Bitcoin, we see the same in Ethereum, not as nicely as Bitcoin, but we've had that, or we have this basically the same story quite often. Bitcoin higher, Ethereum, yes, but limited upside momentum, right? So that's how the tokens work. XRP also trading nicely to slightly higher levels. I still remain rather cautious. If any of the tokens of the observed ones will go lower, it might be XRP according to the charting pattern here. And Solana, to my liking, because I'm long still in the positions, is really underwater, 30-something% expected. But anyways, this market looks good and looking set to kind of potentially move even towards higher levels. Guys, I think that's all of what it takes. We didn't talk about everything so far, but silver looking set to move to the upside as well. Gold, and I've been taking a video at a gold shop here in Singapore where I am currently, and this looks like crazy moving to the upside here. Careful, because any retracement, any negative price sentiment might be seen. And the interesting part is the seemingly likelihood is that the US dollar causes the markets to basically strengthen. But second reason might be as well that risk-averse sentiment also takes part of like that entire Trump and whatnot policy, tariff policy, which is causing the markets to lift or get a lift to the upside. And we have the oil market, oil moving potentially higher as well. We got this on, and with the very strong weekly candlestick pattern on an interesting zone. This one can be seen here. The market zone, which it is essentially, is that one, right? So resistance, support potentially. So let's observe in the next couple of trading days on how the market goes potentially to the upside. Guys, don't forget to leave your comments under the video, and please don't forget as well to subscribe to our channel. Until the next couple of trading days, maybe Tuesday, Wednesday, we got another video on during the end of the week. We got a super duper VIP interview of with one of the most famous and favorable trader of all times here in Singapore. For the ones of you talking precious metals, you know at least and for sure who this guy is. I'm going to meet him at his place, and we're going to talk about financial markets. I'm super excited about that one. Until then, talk to you soon and have a good day trading. See you then, and bye.